Calaveras County, or more particularly, hello residents and voters of District 3 in Calaveras County. Welcome to the District 3 debate between the three candidates for Calaveras County Supervisor. We have with us Merita Callaway, Ed Langan, and Michael Oliveira. And what we're going to do is start with each of them giving us an introduction to themselves and why they're running for office. Ms. Callaway?
Well, I learned to shoot. I learned to make hospital corner beds, and I learned never to be late from a date. And those are criterias when you grow up in a military family. But Calaveras has been my home for 30 years. My daughter went to school at Michelson, Avery, and Bret Hart. And I am very involved with the community, both when I was on the board and now. I really enjoy being part of our community, and I think I have a lot to offer the community, and I'm running for the Board of Supervisors because I think there's been decisions that have been long time in coming, taking too long, and I believe I have the skill set. I know I have the skill set to be a supervisor that listens to people, that is totally responsible to the county and the constituents and the decisions that need to be made on a short-term basis and a long-term basis. And being a supervisor is fun. It's challenging. It makes you decide who you are and what your value system is. And that's Merita Callaway.
Mr. Langan.
Hi, I'm Ed Langan. My wife and I are looking around Northern California for someplace to retire. Discovered Calaveras, fell in love with it. Bought property here about 20 years ago. Moved here a couple years after that. And we love Calaveras. We love everything it has to offer. So I immediately got involved in watching politics and playing a sideline in politics. Discovered that maybe the political decisions we're making in Calaveras County are not the best decisions for the county. I have a business background, a business marketing background, and I've just felt for a long time that we needed more of a business solutions approach to this county's government. And there's a lot of responsibilities, I think, in being a supervisor, and I'm set to do that, but I think most of those responsibilities our last decade of supervisors maybe has not performed well, and I think we become more ambassadors and we have supervisors and doing the supervisor responsibilities. So I'm here to up the game a little bit and make Calaveras a great place, because I do know if you're not vigilant, things can go wrong, and we need to be vigilant in Calaveras County. We got all the water, we got all the ag land, we can grow or graze any food we need. And we've just got everything we have to offer. We have a lifestyle that we wouldn't trade for anything. That's the value in Calaveras County. What we need to stop doing is trying to find some other way to create value. Yes, we need to build a little bit more wealth in Calaveras, and I have a position to do that on. And I think we do it through tourism because we already have that in place. And from there, I just want to, enjoy Calaveras and live it out and make District 3 the best place it can be. And then secondly, all of Calaveras. My number one goal is Calaveras first. I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm up or down. If it's good for Calaveras, I'm for it. If it's not good for Calaveras, I'm not for it. Thank you.
Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. I'm Mike Oliveira. I'm your District 3 Supervisor here in Calaveras County. I've been engaged in this community for a while, but not only as a supervisor. After retiring from law enforcement in the Bay Area from an Oakland Police Department position, I was in the private sector for about 10 to 12 years as a corporate safety director for a very large engineering construction firm that built airports, Caltrans, things of that sort. We purchased our home in 2002 up here, and in 2007, I went back into law enforcement. I went back on the Calaveras County Sheriff's Department. I actually worked patrol, worked at a couple other different assignments, but I ended up being the resident deputy for District 3 in Arnold. Now that gave me the opportunity to take a look at the real District 3 and the people of Calaveras County. I must say, coming from law enforcement in the Bay Area, from the Oakland Police Department, to the Calaveras County Sheriff's Department was a change you would not believe. We had the opportunity to get out, talk to people. We had the opportunity to get into people's lives when they called for help. But all those calls weren't necessarily for help. I did that for about 6 to 7 years. At the urging of the community, they actually convinced me to run for supervisor, which I did in 2014. Fortunately, I was elected and started my term in 2015. Now, 2015 has been a very exciting start of 4 years in my seat as a county supervisor. We had some great ideas and we did some pretty good things. But what we also did was started a change of the culture of Calaveras County when it came to government. Times changed. There were things that had to be addressed that wasn't addressed. We had to develop certain things, and that's exactly why I'm here. We're going to continue for 4 years. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mr. Suera. Now what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'll ask some questions here, and each candidate will have about 2 minutes to respond. And depending on the question and kind of depending on the responses, we may go through this a couple times through the group just to kind of see how everybody settles out in their opinions on whatever I happen to ask about. And I will warn you folks in District 3 right away. I don't live in District 3, so I sure hope I come up with the right questions for you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, lady and gentlemen, what I'd like to start with is finances. It looks like Calaveras County is in for an awfully bleak next couple of years. The current Board of Supervisors has made some decisions, and there is some money in the budget this year that's not going to be there next year. So what I'd like to know is, where do we begin cutting with this $9 to $15 million deficit we're going to be facing? Ms. Callaway?
Well, I don't believe there's a $9 to $15 million deficit. The board has to have the financial discipline to make sure that those departments that are needing funding get the funding. The county is not going bankrupt. It's not going broke. It will not be in dire straits this year or next year. It doesn't have a debt load. So I don't think the doom and gloom that's put on Calaveras is, I've looked at the budget, I don't think it's there. I think it's easy to say we have doom and gloom, but it's not, as long as the board has the financial discipline to make those kinds of decisions that need to be made. We have been through high times and low times without cannabis taxes, because that's what we're talking about here, and we can do it again.
Mr. Langan.
Yeah, I agree with Merita. I don't think the county is in any jeopardy of having problems paying bills or anything else. I think we're on pretty good, pretty sound financial grounds. The money that came in from cannabis, quite frankly, is we hear a lot about that, the $13 million, $9 million, whatever it may be. What we never hear about is the expenses of cannabis. And I'm willing to say that I believe, sincerely, that cannabis is a zero-sum game. That all the money that came in, we spent chasing cannabis around. It was a very expensive proposition. A proposition that, if you don't mind me saying, I don't think the county ever should have got in. The county isn't in the business of creating an industry. The county is in business of regulating an industry if it comes to Calaveras. So therefore, I think we made an initial mistake of that. But we did it because we thought this, because all we could see was dollars. That was a mistake. That's another reason why my business solutions becomes very prominent in my campaign. The county actually, quite frankly, is doing quite well. I've been to finance meetings. I've been to the investment meetings. We have a county budget of about $150 million, which we have no problem paying all our bills and all our expenses. I don't see any cuts in the near future on personnel, either the Sheriff's Department or anywhere else. We're actually in kind of an uptick in the economy. I think our TOT tax, sales tax, property taxes have all increased this year substantially. And that's going to help offset anything that we may need. And I've already said the cannabis dollars, it consumed all the cannabis dollars, so that's a zero-sum game, so we have to take that out of the equation. It didn't balance the budget because the cannabis dollars are still in the budget, are still in the general fund. We have a 10-10-10 fund that stores those, and they can only be spent on specific things. So I see the county as as small as Calaveras is, I see the county is doing financially very, very well. Better than most counties, even bigger than us. So I see no cuts in the future. I just see a real positive future. Do we need to create a little more wealth? Do we need to create a little more income? We do. But we're going to fund the public entities with private business, and that's how we're going to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you, Mike. I take a little bit more realistic approach to this. In my 4 years seated as the supervisor, we see opportunity that we've actually progressed with. Going into this year's budget, we found that we were able to provide some compensation packages for our county employees that really weren't there before. We've always had a deficit, and we've always borrowed from the teeter fund to make up our unfunded balance on the budget. But now, we were actually doing a lot better, and we'd like to continue that. But then again, we are in a state of recovery when it comes to the Butte fire, when it comes to tree mortality, and when it comes to our storm damage of 2017. We're able to be in this position financially because we've had changes in our structure and our department heads. We found some very, very good managers, and we've coupled that with some very, very good employees. We've actually improved our systems, and IT systems and computer systems, and a variety of our departments that make us at least being able to compensate and make this process work good. That's the good news. The bad news is we do have to make that recovery from those disasters we had. We did use Proposition C money, the marijuana money. We used $3 million of that to balance our budget. But that was taken out of that fund, and we left the teeter fund alone. So we've made progress, and we can go through this. Granted, we've got some difficult roads ahead of us. We have some litigation in front of us, but we're going to be able to do this. I'm confident the leadership, especially in District 3, will take us through this crisis and we'll prosper.
Okay. Now with this one, we'll start with you, Mr. Oliveira. You actually touched on several issues that I want to explore a little bit further here. And one of those is the storm recovery. It seems like District 3 got hit about the hardest in those storms of 2017. You lost 2 bridges. One of them has a temporary bridge up, and we're still struggling with Murphy's Drive. So what can one member of a 5-member Board of Supervisors do to get the repairs happening quicker in their district?
Mike, I'm glad you asked that question, because I have to really set the story straight. It's not just one member. As we went through these crises, and when we had to face the decisions of fronting money that we couldn't get authorization from FEMA or OES, and we're going to talk about the Blagan Road Bridge right now. That was about a 9-month process. We were told one thing by FEMA, and then the next thing, that wasn't going to work, we're going to do something else. We eventually got a resolution on that where FEMA would fund a rental of a bridge or a lease that we're doing now. So we learned a couple of lessons with that. We learned some lessons also with the Butte fire when it comes to FEMA reimbursement. It doesn't happen overnight, and the rules may change sometimes. So let's talk about the Murphy Street Bridge. That was a situation where we kind of fell into the same boat, if you will. I was out there the night that happened with Jeff Krovis, our Public Works Director, and we were looking at how we're going to get that. Once again, FEMA said, no, you have another way in there. We're going to be going through a route, and that'll take care of the residents for that. We didn't agree with that, so what we did is tried every opportunity we possibly could. That's going to be a pretty extensive repair, $500,000 to $800,000. Through the group, a neighborhood group, and that's the Blue Lake Springs 14, 15, 16, who contacted me. We held a community meeting. We talked about it. They appeared before the Board of Supervisors, and here's where the board came together. They looked, they listened, and they said, why don't we fund it? Why don't we get that fixed? And I have to commend the other board members for that vote. The motion was made, they voted. Fortunately, FEMA came back about 3 days before we were out there, and they said, we're going to fund it. So now that process is going, and the repairs are in place.
Okay. Mr. Langan.
What I think is that to me, it's a political problem in our county, is that actually in January of 2017, the Board of Supervisors created and signed an emergency declaration. We're specifically talking about the Murphy's Drive Bridge, that it was an emergency declaration and it was public safety issue. Nothing happened for a year, okay? Now, Mike was chair of the board. He's the one that signed that declaration. It's in District 3. It's his job to ride that until he gets it done, okay? What we have to do on the board with 5 members is we have to get consensus from the other board that this is an important decision. Sometimes it isn't in your district, but it's what you have to do. So you get consensus and you move forward on that bridge. That bridge was probably a $250,000 to $300,000 project that I believe got set aside by Public Works as far as priority goes, and we got in a little trouble with FEMA over it, not giving the correct paperwork. After the locals kind of raised the roof, then we got back on it, and fortunately we got a new OES director that's pretty good at this and got it straightened out and got FEMA back into it. At this point in time, of course I don't have all the data, but at this point in time I think we should have made a decision right then and there. Do we want FEMA to help us because it wasn't that expensive of a bridge to fix? Or do we just need to do it on our own as Calaveras County, which we could have funded it, wasn't a problem at all. So once you get involved with FEMA, and this has changed somewhat, but you get into all the requirements of FEMA, that starts popping the expense of a bridge way up. So I think this is one project we should have tackled right through Public Works, fixed. Probably needed to be a free-flowing bridge, get it done, get it over, build a 100-year bridge for 100-year flood conditions, and we would have had this solved 6 months ago. I totally blame it on the county and us, the board, for not getting this done.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Ms. Callaway.
I believe that the Blagan Bridge and the Murphy's Drive Bridge, or the Blagan Bridge past tense, even temporary, and what's going to occur with Murphy's is a result of the community, not the result of what the county did or did not do. The county responded because of community pressure. And part of what government does is public safety, and public safety isn't always just the justice system. Public safety is the bridge or a washed out road. And it is up to the county to determine how to do it, when to do it. And in this case, I think we fell back in our ability to do it. And it's only because of community pressure that they got done. So I credit the community for pulling the chain of the board.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway.
I have one thing, since I still have time.
Okay.
The board does not have $150 million. They only have about 64.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. But that's okay. We can replay it later.
I said the budget was $150 million.
Yeah, but that's not what they have responsibility for.
You talked about the general fund.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, back on money. We have a current sheriff. Now, granted, we're also having an election for sheriff at the same time. But our sheriff's office has continually beat the drum that it needs more money to operate. And it needs more money to attract better deputies and or deputies who will start the job here and then continue here, not gain some experience and then move on elsewhere. So I'd like to hear what you three propose is a way that the county can sustain and improve its sheriff's department. Ms. Callaway?
I don't think it's, first of all, sheriffs, just by being a sheriff, and I've been through 2 of them, and I mean, they always whine at budget time that they need more money. You know, so does the assessor, so does planning, so does every department does. But to me, it's the justice system. So you hire more deputies. At some point, oh, well, that bad person that you just took off the street needs a public defender. Well, if they need a public defender, the DA needs somebody. Oh, and so they get released, whether it's catch and release or release because their time's up. They need probation. So it isn't just hiring more deputies. We have to look at the whole compendium of the justice system. The justice system has the majority, I'd say close to 60% of the county's general fund. So as much as we would all like more deputies, and I think we should fund that, the priority also has to be looking at the other departments that service that public safety component.
Mr. Langan.
Yes, recruitment has been a problem here for the sheriff, and so is retention. And I think that, and so is budget. Let's say it's all part of it. So I put together 5 goals when I ran for office. Okay, and my first goal, and that's what we're going to talk about, is law enforcement and safe communities. Okay, nothing great can happen in Calaveras without safe communities. I totally believe that. And I also believe, as supervisor, I have to back up the goal that I put forward. So the sheriff's budget right now is about $15.4 million. That's about 10% of the county budget. If the sheriff needs another 2%, another 3%, that's $18 million, $19.5 million. I'm sure we can come to that conclusion. We can dig up that money in the county budget. We don't run the county that tight. If he needs that, okay, so what we do is we go to the sheriff and we say, here's our problem. We want safe communities. It's a logistics problem with the sheriff. I mean, he's got to be at 4 corners of the county, and that's not easy to do. So I'm not in law enforcement, but let's say he needs 5 or 6 deputies on the road all the time, then that's a given. If he puts together a plan that demonstrates his need, and then there'll be a cost associated with it, I form an ad hoc committee at the board. We come over, visit the sheriffs. We get people from the 4 corners of the county that are having these problems, 30-minute, 2 or 3 hour, wait time. We sit in a meeting. If everybody decides that this is a good plan and we think it'll work, then we give them the budget dollars to do it. And I don't think that's a problem. But we don't support anything without a plan. We need a plan first. Okay. Retention is another problem with the sheriff. We just need to redo our hiring practices, and I think we need to reach out, find maybe some sheriff's deputies that are in an area they'd like not to be in. They'd come to Calaveras because who wouldn't want to live here? They give up a little pay, but they live through retirement. And then we get maybe 15 years experience on the force instead of 5 years. So we ended up with a more mature force and a better sheriff's department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Mr. Oliveira.
Very serious problem. When I took office as a Board of Supervisor in District 3, our manpower requirements on the Sheriff's Department were great, and that was due to budget cuts in the previous 5 to 10 years. When the economy took a dump, so did our services in the county. Public safety is going to be the first to make that a reality for our citizens. We do have a problem in retention. We fixed that problem. We actually were able to put forth a compensation program for our public safety this year that was long overdue. That was a step of that journey. More importantly, we haven't been able to do enough. The surrounding agencies are taking our law enforcement personnel by lateral transfer because they're able to offer that compensation package. It's not only in the patrol division, not only in the sheriff's department, in our actual correctional officers in our jail. We are down to minimum staffing at times. We try to encourage people to stay with us, but sometimes that offers so well that we cannot compete with it. I know of 3 deputies right now that are going to different agencies probably within 30 days. We have people in the academy. Excuse me. But it takes a year and a half to make those folks even affect our public safety status because of training, going through the academy, going through the field training process. And then we have a lack of supervisory personnel because those folks are leaving. Our supervisors are leaving, and we can't bring our people we just brought on up to scale to be a supervisor. We have a very serious problem. And I am actually part of that solution by taking a firm stance in public safety and backing the fire departments and the sheriff's departments and the district attorney and the probation department. That's what I've done, and I'm proud of it.
You mentioned firefighting services, and that's something that has always been a tricky business in Calaveras County because we have CAL FIRE, California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, that provides most of our wildland fire protection, but every community has its own fire protection district. I'm interested in how you candidates view funding fire protection in this county, because all of our fire protection districts are starting to really feel that budget squeeze. Their taxes in their particular districts aren't quite paying for the services. So how do we move forward with fire safety? Mr. Langan?
Fire safety. Well, I think up in Ebbets Pass, we formed a special district to help fund Ebbets Pass Fire District, and they've done very, very well. So that would be the first, let's just say, template I'd look at, because I think it's been very successful. We have CAL FIRE, so that's not a problem. And quite frankly, fires, and excluding the Butte fire, fires in Calaveras County usually get taken care of quite quick. I mean, I from the day I moved here, I was always in awe of how quick fire reacts to something, whether it be volunteer or paid firemen. I just think we get the job done. We get the job done not only through swift action and knowing what we're doing, getting the equipment to the scene quickly, but also in making sure traffic keeps flowing. It's just amazing when you move up here and you see how well we manage this with a lot of volunteer people. So I think as far as funding, there's a lot of volunteer firemen. Murphy's Fire District, a lot of them have a lot of volunteers. So I think we take the Ebbets Pass template, we look at that real hard and see if we can apply it, which is probably a property assessment, property tax assessment, and we move forward with that if we need more funding for our fire departments. I think the people of Calaveras County, they want safe communities, and that includes the fire district, and that's one of my goals, safe communities, because it includes a lot of things. It includes infrastructure as well. But I think I'm convinced they're willing to pay for it. It's just a matter of how we present it and what they're willing to pay for. And as long as they know they're getting their dollars back. No one wants to pay for something they never see, but if they know they're getting better response, then they're happy and they're going to forward it. And I think that's the solution to funding fire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Callaway?
Well, we have the fire department wars, which cycle on and off over many, many, many years. We tried at one time to combine all the fire districts into one fire district. Well, that wouldn't happen for many reasons. Predominantly, each fire district has their own elected board. Sorry, Sam. And they want to manage. Every community wants their own fire district. Totally understand that. In Ebbets Pass, we're very fortunate. The community in the Ebbets Pass Fire District passed a tax, then we've taxed ourselves. Many of the fire districts have tried to impose a tax, and it's failed. If I remember correctly, Milton withdrew. They didn't want to pay it, so Milton, in essence, isn't covered, though the reality is that they would be covered. In the Valley Springs area, 2 of the fire districts combined. It's very expensive to run a fire department. I am not for the Board of Supervisors starting to fund fire departments. I know they did this year, and I can see you help a fire department if they need it, but if we're getting back into the fire safety business, into fire engines and having to support fire departments, then I would like to see another model than what we currently have. And I used to be married to a fireman.
Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you, Mike. I do have to say I'm quite proud of Ebbets Pass Fire District. The personnel, the facilities, they are probably the best not only in the county, but maybe Northern California. We did take the initiative in District 3 to pass a fire tax, as stated by Merita, and that has worked out tremendously well for us. I was just at the fire board meeting in Ebbets Pass and learned that they are purchasing a new ambulance to a tune of $180,000 through a loan through the fire district and the Firemen's Association. to make up a difference, and that's outstanding. I wish we could take that model and put it in the remaining 11 districts in this county. But you're absolutely correct. It's hard to pass a fire tax. I know Chief Robitelli tried that in his district before he left the service here in Calaveras County. I know Copper has done that. They have a paramedic program, I understand, down there now. But it is difficult, and it's a process that the citizens of this county has to realize. We fund the fire department as best we can on the Board of Supervisors. And one of the other funding streams we're looking at is the transit occupancy tax. That's going to be an issue we're discussing right now with the committee. And hopefully we can find some method to get a reasonable transit occupancy tax on the books for the voters to vote on in November. That'll bring us up to par with the remaining tax rates that are in our surrounding counties. So I'm a strong proponent of fire and police, and I think we've done our job, we've excelled, and that's our goal, to make this county safe.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. I want to actually jump to the fire notion and your kind of all of your suggestions. District 3 is probably the best example because of Murphy's Fire and Ebbets Pass Fire. They are a couple of fantastic districts in the county. How does, and this is a little bit again that one supervisor versus the other four, not necessarily versus, but working with the other four, when you have a district that can't get that fire tax passed and it starts looming on bankruptcy, when does the county step in and how does the county step in? Mr. Langan?
Good question. First, I think that we make a mistake a lot of times when we present a fire tax or any other kind of tax. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, well, you know, Mike mentioned TOT. I think we're making that mistake right now with the TOT tax. Something I'm very much for is that people in Calaveras fix the problems in Calaveras. Okay, I really don't like outside people fixing the problems of Calaveras. I think we're very capable of doing it. If you've ever been to a sheriff's dinner and you see money just being thrown at law enforcement, you know what the people are behind. It's just a showing of force of how much money they're, you know, $150 or 12 cupcakes. I mean, that's what we're willing to do here. So I'll hit the TOT tax first. We're looking at raising the TOT tax, which we think is parity with the surrounding counties and Angels Camp, to 10%, from 6 to 10. So we hired an outside firm, not for a lot of money, but you know, in the vicinity of $25,000. I would rather have spent the money here and done that, because what you have to do is you have to go, who's affected by it? To begin with, everybody in business that charges TOT. So let's get them in a room, okay? Then some of the citizens and some of the people that rent their homes as weekend rentals get into that picture. So we decide right here how it's going to work for those people, because they're the ones that are affected by it. When you hire an outside firm and they come back with a report, you know, I just tell you, it puts up resistance, and then the voters put up resistance because there's negativity going on, and we need to get rid of that. If we get them all in a room and we decide it's our best interest to raise it or not raise it, I think if we go from, in District 3, if we go from 6% to 10%, we net probably a plus $400,000. Okay, so there's value in that, depending on how we're going to spend the $400,000. Okay, now if we say it's for fire, or you know, it's going to be for roads or fire, we'll probably get support. But it's the presentation where we get messed up. Oftentimes, because I see people up here are way too willing to fund things. They just need to be asked the right questions and in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Ms. Callaway?
Again, I go back to the question is funding fire departments that are on the verge of bankruptcy or close to it. Fire engines are expensive. We have fire departments that are operated just with volunteers. Volunteers have jobs. How do you provide that kind of service with a volunteer system? And they're always looking for volunteers. Again, I go back to, if we're going to have fire departments that the county, i.e. the Board of Supervisors, is going to start to fund, then I want a different model. We cannot fund, we'll take Ebbets Pass out, and sometimes we'll take Murphy's out, because Murphy's also needs help. And maybe Copper. But everybody else, they need help. I don't doubt that. But we cannot have 11 fire districts running like we are now. And we've talked before. I mean, we had talked years ago about combining fire districts, combining Murphy's and Ebbets Pass. I mean, that's just a start. We cannot afford to fund fire districts as a county until the model changes. And the fire districts did not want to be under the thumb of the Calaveras Board of Supervisors. Not saying good or bad, I'm just saying that's a reality. And so if they want county help, they need to look at a different model to operate.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Mr. Oliveira.
I have to stand on my position. My opponents, I really question their accuracy of some facts and how funding of public service and public safety actually occurs. You're right. Ebbets Pass is a jewel. We've done the right things. Unfortunately, I wish we had the opportunity in the other remaining districts to follow that lead. And that's to the voters. The voters in those individual districts will vote for that tax increase if they want to come to the level of service that we enjoy. But then again, I'm a county supervisor for the entire county. It's my job to make sure that they have the proper tools and all the help I can get them to get to that point. There are times where in budgets they all look at fire procedures in Ebbets Pass, and we're kind of worried, what's going to happen now? We pay for those services. We invested in the fire district, and I would encourage every other fire district, take a good long look. Educate your folks. That's a working model. That works. And that's what we did, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
All right, let's shift a little bit toward revenues and or how we attract them to the county. So what I'd like to ask is where each of you sees the Board of Supervisors taking steps to encourage new business and sustainable businesses to come to or to continue to exist here in the county. Mr. Langan?
Okay, that may or may not be directly a supervisorial thing, but being that the supervisors are the leadership of the county, and that's a very important statement to make, that we do need to draw the county towards these sorts of motions. And I think when I first announced I was running for supervisor, went down to the county, I interviewed with a number of different, spoke to a number of different department heads, CAO included, auditor included, and heard a number of times we needed to create more revenue. They need revenue. And I explained to all of them, quite frankly, the public companies or public government don't create revenue, okay, except through taxes and property taxes. What you're telling me is you want to raise fees or taxes. I think we're tapped out, okay? So I drove right from the county offices down to the Visitors Bureau in Angels Camp. Lisa Bolton happened to be in. We sat down and I said, Lisa, I think you're really good at what you do. I said, fantastic. You bring a lot of tourism to Calaveras County. We're growing. I think you're on the cutting edge of doing this for such a small county with the budget you have. And your outreach is excellent. You tap and you go further than just your stuff. And so you know what you're doing. Here's my offer. I says, we need to bring more business into Calaveras County, but we need to bring business that has ownership with it, okay? So could we come up with a business opportunities and ventures in Calaveras County to go into your website, your tourism website, that tells people if you're traveling up here and you do own a business, whether it's a machine shop or it could be anything, I'm not targeting any particular business, worth $2 to $10 million, and you're traveling in Calaveras, so you love to recreate up here, think about bringing your business and up here with you, okay? Then you either build a home, start a business, employ our people. But the most important thing, the wealth creation stays here. A big box store comes in, we get sales jobs, we get some sales tax, but the wealth creation gets sucked out and goes to corporate headquarters. It doesn't work for us. We need another dozen businesses here that really create wealth, and we'll be a lot happier. And it'll help fund government as well.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Mr. Oliveira?
Glad you asked that question, Mike. That's exactly what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. We have a situation in Calaveras County where a long time ago we missed that big boat. And Mr. Langland's right. big box stores are not the answer. I'm part of a program that started 2.5 years ago where we determined that not everybody that graduates from high school is going to go to college. And if you'll ask any business person that's in Calaveras County or Northern California, what is the hardest thing they have to face? Qualified employees. That's the asset of a good, thriving, successful business. So we went to the school districts. We're working with the superintendents. There's a group of individuals that I'm engaged with, Paul DeBartolo. We're engaged with both superintendents, both school districts. We're engaged with Dave Thorney over at the Motherlode Job Training Center, which I sit on that committee. And I also sit on the committee of the Economic Development District. I've been on that committee since taking office back in 2015. We've put together a program where we're actually talking to the sophomores, the folks in high schools, that if you're not going to make up your mind to go to college, what are you going to do in Calaveras County? We have a serious lack of trades persons in this county. Plumbers, carpenters, medical workers, office workers, machinists, welders. Now, granted, we have those programs available in the schools, but now we have a method, a process where we bring in companies, 25 employees less, introduce them to Calaveras County, introduce them to a training force that they can control and they can use as an employee farm for those manufacturing facilities that they're going to bring to Calaveras County. That's a 5-year program. We've made leaps and bounds in 2.5 years. We've already talked to employers.
Okay.
They're looking at the program, and that's what we've done.
All right. Now, along that line, we've bandied it about a little bit. Now I want each of you to talk about the transient occupancy tax.
Did you want me to answer that
question?
question?
I'm sorry, Merita.
Oh, no, that's all right.
I'm very sorry, Merita. Go ahead.
Oh.
My apologies.
Mm-hmm. No. Anyone in economic development will tell you the first thing you have to do is nurture those businesses that are here now. And I don't think we're always doing that. I know I get criticized sometimes because I'm always pushing shop local. We also see the post office and whoever delivering Amazon boxes. So brick and mortar stores are not it. And if you're going to be talking about brick and mortar type stores or service industry jobs, those are generally at the low end of the pay scale, and we do not have housing for people at the low end of the pay scale. So you have to have a job housing match, and we're not doing that. And I mean, that's good. It's another question you can ask. So we talk about bringing people in. What about those people who are here that want to work here and work from home, for example? Okay, we need the infrastructure. Calaveras is no different than any other rural county trying to get broadband in. AT&T is now putting up a tower at Sky High. And Sky High for years has been talking about we want broadband. Is that the proper word to use these days? So to say, well, let's bring businesses in. No, let's take care of what we have now. Let's nurture them. Let's reinvent them. Let's help them in any way we can. And then when we start having successful models there, then we start having other businesses come in.
And I apologize again.
That's quite all right, Mr. Taylor.
Now, transient occupancy tax, in my mind, it's the easy one because it's not a tax on me. It's a tax to people visiting. And I've paid it when I've gone to San Francisco and cussed up a storm looking at that hotel bill with a 28% tax for visiting the city and county of San Francisco. What are your three opinions on raising the transient occupancy tax here and what that could do to bolster the budget? Ms. Callaway?
We put the TOT, Transit Occupancy Tax, on the ballot twice. It's real easy when the board does because you don't have to go out and collect signatures. Collecting signatures is how you educate the public. So that's one. And I sort of felt that we should go out and do signatures collecting to get the item on the ballot. The other is that if the board chooses to specify where that TOT goes, because of course we never trust the government to spend it the way we want it, then it needs a 2/3 vote. So going a 2/3 vote's a higher ring to catch than if you do 50% plus 1, which is what you need if it goes into the general fund. I think if we raise it, it should be at a 50% plus 1. We'd have a better chance of getting it. Then I have to tell you the truth, I have mixed feelings about it. I understand from the newspaper, the Calaveras Enterprise, which we won't name because that's advertising for Mr. Taylor, but that the board's considering 12%. I think that's too big a reach because Calaveras is conservative and we don't want taxes. And if you don't want taxes, it's hard to get and the people have to vote on it. So I'm really mixed on whether I would support a TOT. It's up to the board to manage the resources they have, and as was pointed out earlier, it's low-hanging fruit. And is that what we want to do, is catch the low-hanging fruit?
Thanks, Ms. Callaway. Mr. Oliveira.
Transient occupancy tax, we like to call it the hotel tax. That's a little bit softer term. Total support of it. We have been at 6% for a long, long time. It's not a tax levied against our citizens. It's a tax that pays for our infrastructure, our public safety, and our marketing department to people that want to come up to our county. It has to be a dedicated tax because in the past, those funds were going to a lot of different places. Maybe some of those places weren't designated. If we have to have a safe community, we have to pay for it. If we have a place where we want our people to come up and enjoy Calaveras County, we got to provide infrastructure for them to come here. Our road systems. So if we got a safe county, a way to get here, then we have to have a way to entice people or convince people to come here. Our Visitors Bureau. This is a win-win situation all the way around. Our tot tax, if you will, or hotel tax, saw a significant increase last year, and it's on the rise. I actually sit on the committee that investigates the tot tax situation and how we're going to present it. The board has not seen this yet. This committee was formed with Supervisor Clapp, myself, and a variety of people in this community, in those fields. The reason it hasn't passed before, because it wasn't presented correctly. Everybody thought it was just another tax that we had to pay. That's not the situation. We have to present this reasonably, accurately, and as a benefit for the county. And the folks that will be paying that tax will enjoy it because they'll have better roads, safe, and a nice place to come. Thank you,
All
Mike.
right, Mr. Oliveira. Mr. Langan.
Well, I don't like any increase in taxes. I'll say that first. The one that I think is possible is a new TOT tax going to 10%. I wouldn't be in favor of 12%. But I'm not going to say it's not my decision. What I really think we need to do is I'm unaware of what Mike is talking about with the people, group he's got together, but that is the way I would approach it. The board can't go sell this. We can't hire people to go sell this. The people that actually have to charge the tax, the people that own the hotels, motels, and the bed and breakfasts, they have to get out in the community and say it's okay or it's not okay, because they're the ones that are most affected by it. Every time you raise a tax, and this doesn't fit this exactly, but every time you raise a tax, you change behavior. So sometimes you raise taxes so high, behavior goes down. You go, gee, we've got to raise taxes again because it didn't get, gas tax was a perfect example a couple of years, Jerry Brown. He discouraged the buying of gasoline, so he had to raise the taxes again because he didn't get the revenue he thought he was going to get. TOT, I don't think falls in that category because we're probably on the low side, but I don't always like comparing with other places, San Francisco, for example, 28%, because those people bear that, and we don't, okay? And so, you don't come to Calaveras to get, ripped off. You come to Calaveras to enjoy yourself and feel like you get a good deal. So I think we have to be very careful. But I think the only way we're going to sell it is to get the people that have to charge it behind it and tell the public it's good. And that's the way we would sell an increase in TOT. And I will have to finish by saying this. TOT, I'm for safe communities, no question about it. Everything we can do for that, I'm for. But TOT is not the kind of money we need to fix roads with. We need a lot more money than that to fix roads with. TOT can support some things, particularly the Visitors Bureau, and I think some of it's split up in four ways now. So we might be splitting it up too much because it's insignificant. Whenever if Public Works gets $100,000, they're going to say, what do we do with this, So I think we have to be very careful on how we set that, because when I hear that, I'm going, well, it's insignificant. It's not going to work. But that's my take. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Langan. All right, we're almost to the end, folks. And now what I'd like to do is give each of you 3 minutes to give some closing remarks and talk to the voters a bit. Mr. Oliveira?
Thank you, Mike. Once again, I want to thank the folks here at the Public Access TV for having us here. I want to thank my opponents. Sometimes we don't have an opportunity to see each other and talk like we should. But the bottom line is we've covered a lot of different issues here, especially in District 3. Ladies and gentlemen, we've done good, but we're not done yet. We need to continue what we're doing. We need to excel in our efforts to make this county what it should be and what it was a long time ago. We've had the opportunity in the past 10 to 15 years to excel, but it hasn't happened. In the last 4 years, it has happened. We have made progress. We are going to continue to make that progress if we attack the problems that come to us on a daily basis with reasonableness, understanding, and taking it on with what we have to deal with. But we have to look at the future also. It's very important that we plan not only for tomorrow, but we plan for 5 to 10 years from now. Some think that we're in a precarious situation. Well, we are. In some areas, we are. But we are far ahead of everybody else in other areas. And it's my determination to remain in this seat to continue that fight. That is my promise to you, folks, the voters of District 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. Mr. Langan.
Yes. I'm threw my hat in the ring because I do think we can do a better job running the county. I truly believe that. And I think we need to take much more of a business solutions approach to this whole thing. I think the political leans we have in Calaveras County have gotten us in a little trouble. Politicians make some legislation, it doesn't work out going down the road, and they think it's going to work out down the road, and for somehow it ends up costing me and you, the taxpayer, a lot of money. A businessman makes a decision, he fixes it. He gets it wrong. I have a marketing background. Marketing is a moving target. We're always monitoring and modifying whatever we do because it's required, okay? And I think that's a different sense, a different mindset that I bring to the board. Plus, I think I'll ask a lot of more questions, like what-if questions. What if this happens? What if that happens? Create more dialogue on the board. We need to have much better open discussions on everything we do at the board. Today, I see them sit there. It looks like they're playing a poker game. Nobody wants to lay their cards down until somebody else lays their card down. I think that has to stop. I think the Planning Commission did an excellent job when they went through the general plan. And I always told board members, watch the Planning Commission. They know how to work together. They know how to create conversation. Yes, they do have different agendas, but they all understood their platform, what they were working from, and then raised to that. The Board of Supervisors last year took a 2-day retreat over at Ironstone. Cost maybe $15,000, $20,000. I don't know the cost. To set a series of goals of creating a foundation of how they would judge from that day, an event from that day forward. They failed to do that. At the end of the 2 days, they gave the assignment to staff. I say that's not democracy. We hired a board member, and we hired our board members in our districts to represent us. We want to go and congratulate them when they do something good, and we want to be able to go and talk to them when we're not happy with that. When they continue to assign things to staff, that takes the democracy out of it. We cannot go to staff. So I think I'll be a very upfront and create a lot of good in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langan. Ms. Callaway.
Being on the Board of Supervisors is an exciting position to be in. It's one that I thoroughly enjoy. I'm dedicated to the residents of District 3. So that's one aspect. And what their issues are become my issues. So that's a high priority for me. The other is the decisions that the board makes, mostly land use and financial, impact the whole county. So it's important that a supervisor understands that. Their decisions aren't just always for their district. I really want to be your supervisor again. I think I do a good job. I know I did a good job. And it was just circumstances that Mr. Oliveira got the job. But
I thought it was votes.
see, that was the Electoral College. But the reality is that I want your vote on June 5th or today's May 7th when you get your ballot in the mail, because about almost 70% of the people vote absentee. I'd be very honored to represent those of you in District 3. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's in your hands. As Ms. Callaway said, June 5th is the day that we go to the polls and vote in this election. We will have you folks deciding the District 3 race. You'll vote between Merita Callaway, Ed Langan, and Michael Oliveira. And make sure, if you haven't, that you have registered to vote by May 21st of this year. So get registered, then you can vote, and your voice will count in District 3 and in all the other races here in California. And so, for the Calaveras County Public Access TV studio, I'm Mike Taylor. I want to thank the candidates, and we look forward to you folks voting. Good night.